February 1st, 2025. Madison Square Garden, Lakers versus Knicks. NBC Sports launches Basketball Night in America with a broadcast decision that would ignite one of the most uncomfortable conversations the WNBA has ever faced. Because sitting in that analyst chair wasn't a retired legend. It wasn't a seasoned broadcaster easing into a new role. It was Caitlin Clark, active player, 23 years old. And in less than 5 minutes on national television, she did something the league has spent years trying to prevent. She made individual star power impossible to ignore. This is the story NBC didn't plan for, the disruption the WNBA didn't want, and the moment that exposed the league's biggest fear, broadcast live for millions to witness. Here's what actually happened. NBC announces Caitlin Clark as a special contributor for their newly launched Basketball Night in America. The reaction is immediate. Social media explodes before she even appears on screen. Fans aren't just curious. They're invested. The segment airs right before tip-off at Madison Square Garden, one of basketball's most iconic venues, for one of the league's most watched matchups. This wasn't a quiet debut tucked into off-peak hours. This was primetime. This was Lakers and Knicks. This was the NBA putting Caitlin Clark front and center. And then she speaks, breaking down plays with the kind of confidence that doesn't come from reading notes. She's talking about spacing, movement, timing, natural, clear, thoughtful. The other analysts pause. You can see it in their reactions. This wasn't supposed to be a teaching moment, but that's exactly what it became. Because Caitlin Clark didn't just answer questions. She guided the conversation. She anticipated follow-ups. She corrected assumptions. She explained the game in a way that made casual viewers lean in. Many of you have been saying this for weeks. Star power matters. Mainstream attention follows competence, not narratives. And on February 1st, NBC proved you right. If you believe the story behind the story matters, smash that like button. It tells us we're on the right track. Because what happened next is where everything gets uncomfortable. The numbers came in. Viewership didn't slowly rise. It surged. Her segment outperformed the NBA content around it. Clips of her analysis spread faster than highlights from the actual games. Social media wasn't just reacting, it was amplifying. People who don't typically watch WNBA content were sharing her breakdown. Fans who follow the NBA exclusively were impressed. And that's when the tension started building. Because this time, it wasn't about ticket sales or jersey numbers. It was about something the WNBA has never fully reconciled. Attention. And where attention goes, power follows. Behind the scenes, reports surfaced quickly. Several WNBA players weren't happy. Not because Caitlin did anything wrong, not because she lacked credentials, but because of what her presence represented. Visibility, validation, proof that individual star power can't be managed through talking points about collective growth. The league has spent years promoting the message that everyone matters equally, that the WNBA succeeds when the entire league rises together. But on national television, during a major NBA broadcast, one player stood out anyway, and she didn't just stand out. She earned it. That's the part that makes this so uncomfortable. There was no controversy, no drama, no complaints about her performance, just competence. And when competence draws this much attention, it forces people to ask a question many don't want to confront. Why her? The answer is simple, but it contradicts years of messaging. People watch her. NBC didn't create this moment. Fans did. The network followed the numbers. And numbers don't care about politics, narratives, or league-first messaging. They care about results. Let's connect the dots. NBC didn't ease Caitlin into this role. They didn't give her a few weeks to settle in. They chose her to help launch Sunday Night Basketball, Lakers at Knicks, Madison Square Garden. That decision alone said everything. Because when a network makes that choice, they're not experimenting. They're investing. And networks don't invest in players they think might work out. They invest in stars they know will deliver. Internal conversations started almost immediately. Not public statements, private discussions. What happens if this continues? How do you balance coverage when one player consistently draws more attention than everyone else? What does the future look like if this keeps growing? Because it wasn't a one-time surge. Engagement stayed high. Fans wanted more. NBC scheduled her second appearance for March 29th, Knicks versus Thunder in Oklahoma City. Another major matchup, another primetime slot, another opportunity for Caitlin Clark to prove this wasn't a fluke. And that's exactly why the reaction has been so strong. Because once a player crosses into mainstream sports media, not as a story, but as a voice, as an authority, there's no going back. That night, Caitlin Clark wasn't just a WNBA player making a guest appearance. She was a basketball analyst. She was someone networks trust to explain the game at the highest level. She was someone casual fans and diehard followers both respected. You were onto something when you noticed the discomfort. This isn't about jealousy. It's about what happens when individual success becomes too big to fit inside the framework the league has built. For years, the WNBA's strategy has been clear. Promote the collective, celebrate the league, make sure no single player becomes bigger than the product itself. But Caitlin Clark's NBC debut exposed the flaw in that approach, because mainstream success doesn't work that way. Casual fans don't tune in for leagues, they tune in for players, moments, personalities, stories they can follow. NBC executives have been clear about their expectations. They believe she's built for this. They point to her comfort on camera, her thoughtful answers, her ability to explain the game in ways that resonate with audiences who might not follow basketball closely. This wasn't her first time in the spotlight. She's gone viral before doing play-by-play for fun. She's been in MLB broadcast booths. She's comfortable in big moments. The difference now is the platform and the stakes. Reading between the lines, the tension isn't about Caitlin's qualifications. It's about what her success represents. A disruption to the carefully managed narrative that everyone should rise together, that individual stars shouldn't overshadow the collective mission. But NBC's decision proves something the WNBA can't control. Mainstream media follows attention, and attention follows stars. What do you think happens when one player consistently delivers what networks desperately need? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, because this conversation is just getting started. And the implications reach far beyond one broadcast appearance. Let's filter out the noise and focus on what NBC actually discovered. When Caitlin Clark appeared on Basketball Night in America, she didn't just perform well. She demonstrated something networks have been searching for across all sports: the ability to explain complex concepts in ways that engage both hardcore fans and casual viewers. That's rare. Most analysts lean too far in one direction. They either oversimplify for general audiences and lose credibility with serious fans, or they get too technical and lose everyone who isn't already deeply invested. Caitlin found the balance, and NBC noticed immediately. Here's what makes this moment different from typical player appearances. She wasn't there to promote anything. She wasn't launching a product or plugging a documentary. She was there because NBC believed she could contribute to their coverage at a level that justified primetime placement. That's not something networks do as a favor. That's a business decision based on expected return, and the return exceeded expectations. The WNBA community is buzzing about what this means for future media opportunities. Because if one active player can successfully cross into mainstream NBA coverage, what happens to the narrative that the WNBA needs collective promotion to succeed? What happens when networks realize individual star power generates more engagement than league-wide messaging? These aren't hypothetical questions anymore. February 1st answered them. We're getting into territory that makes some people uncomfortable, but sources suggest this is exactly the conversation happening behind closed doors right now. Multiple reports indicate that players and league officials are privately discussing how to respond to moments like this, not because anyone believes Caitlin shouldn't have opportunities, but because her success exposes a fundamental tension the WNBA has avoided addressing directly. Can the league maintain its collective-first philosophy when mainstream success consistently follows individual stars? The answer that's emerging isn't the one many people wanted, because networks don't build coverage around philosophies. They build coverage around what works, and what works is star power. What works is personalities that audiences connect with. What works is moments that feel authentic rather than carefully managed. Caitlin Clark's NBC debut was all of those things. And the reaction from fans proved it. Social media is lighting up with theories about what comes next. Some people believe this is the beginning of a broader shift, that more WNBA players will get opportunities in mainstream basketball media, not just women's basketball coverage, that networks will start viewing the WNBA as a talent pipeline for broadcasting, not just a separate league to cover during its season. Others worry that concentrating attention on one player undermines the progress the entire league has made. But here's what the numbers reveal. When Caitlin Clark's segment aired, viewership spiked. When clips spread on social media, engagement followed. When casual fans shared her analysis, new audiences discovered her. That's not happening because of league messaging. That's happening because of individual appeal. And the uncomfortable truth is that mainstream success has always worked this way. In every sport, in every era, stars drive attention. Attention drives growth. Growth creates opportunities. Connecting the dots reveals something the WNBA can't ignore much longer. The players who generate the most mainstream attention are also the ones opening doors for everyone else. When Caitlin Clark succeeds on NBC, it doesn't just benefit her. It proves to networks that WNBA players belong in these spaces, that they can hold their own alongside NBA analysts, that they can contribute at a level that justifies investment. That's the actual pathway to broader media opportunities, even if it doesn't fit the collective first narrative. NBC's decision to bring her back for a second appearance on March 29th confirms they're not treating this as a one-time experiment. They're building something. They're testing whether sustained presence generates sustained engagement. And if it does, the implications extend far beyond one player's broadcasting career. Because once networks realize WNBA players can successfully contribute to NBA coverage, the entire media landscape shifts. If these reports are accurate, the tension inside the WNBA isn't about whether Caitlin deserves these opportunities. It's about what her success forces everyone to acknowledge. That individual star power matters more than the league has been willing to admit publicly. That mainstream audiences connect with personalities, not collective missions. That growth happens fastest when networks follow attention rather than ideology. Here's the part that changes everything moving forward. Caitlin Clark proved she belongs in that chair, not as a guest, not as a novelty, as a legitimate basketball analyst who can explain the game at the highest level. And NBC executives have made it clear they see long-term potential. They're not just filling segments, they're building a role. And when networks start building roles around individual WNBA players in mainstream basketball coverage, the entire conversation about visibility and opportunity transforms. You are onto something when you notice the discomfort around this moment. Because it's not just about one broadcast appearance. It's about what happens when individual success becomes impossible to contain within the frameworks the league has built. It's about what happens when mainstream media proves that star power generates results. It's about what happens when the numbers reveal a truth that contradicts years of messaging. February 1st wasn't just a successful debut, it was proof of concept. Proof that WNBA players can thrive in mainstream basketball media. Proof that networks will invest when they see returns. Proof that audiences respond to competence and personality regardless of which league a player comes from. And that proof creates pressure, not just on the WNBA to adapt, but on everyone involved to acknowledge what actually drives mainstream success. The conversation happening right now isn't about whether Caitlin Clark should have gotten this opportunity. It's about what her success means for everyone else. Does it open doors, or does it concentrate attention in ways that make collective growth harder? The answer depends on what you believe about how mainstream media actually works. And after February 1st, the evidence is clear. If you found this breakdown valuable, make sure you're subscribed and notifications are turned on, because this story is far from over. NBC has already scheduled her second appearance. The reactions are still developing, and the implications for the WNBA's future media strategy are just beginning to surface. We're going deep on what happens next and what it means when individual star power collides with collective first philosophy. You won't want to miss it. This is the moment everything changed, not because NBC planned a disruption, but because competence and star power combined in ways the league couldn't control. Caitlin Clark's Analyst debut exposed the WNBA's biggest fear. That individual success might matter more than anyone was willing to admit. And now that truth is out there, broadcast live for millions to see. There's no putting it back.